My best friend tried to ruin my wedding by spreading lies about me, and now she's demanding I forgive her and let her be godmother to our child or she'll reveal more secrets. The first sign that Claire, 32F, my best friend, was up to something happened just a week before my wedding. I've been swamped with last-minute details, making sure the flowers were ordered, the venue was confirmed, the guest list was final, and so on. But then I started noticing a shift in how a few close friends and family members were treating me, sudden cold shoulders, hesitant looks, and whispered conversations that seemed to end whenever I walked into the room. It was my fiancé Adam, 34M, who brought it to my attention one night, just as we were sitting down to dinner. He put down his fork, watching me with a serious expression. "Megan, 30F, are you sure you're okay?" he asked gently, his brows furrowed with worry. "Of course," I replied, smiling, though I felt a gnawing anxiety in my stomach. "Just normal pre-wedding jitters, I think." "Why?" He hesitated, as though weighing his words. "People have been saying things," he said finally. "Things about, well, about your past. About things I'd never heard before. It just doesn't sound like you, so I didn't want to believe it." My stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" "Claire told some of the wedding party and your family that you had an affair back in college, and that you never told me about it. She said she thought I should know before the wedding." I felt my hands go cold. That was not only untrue, but it was a shocking accusation coming from Claire, who had been my best friend since high school, who knew everything about my life and my relationship with Adam. "She said that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Adam nodded, looking uncomfortable. "I didn't believe it, Megan. I just thought, you should know what she's been saying." Over the next few days, as I tried to prepare myself for my wedding, I felt like I was walking on a field of landmines. Little by little, people came forward, asking me about things I'd supposedly done. Stories Claire had fed them about my reckless college years, my so-called commitment issues, and even rumors that I'd tried to break up Adam's last relationship to get him for myself. I couldn't believe it. These were all people who had known me for years, some since childhood, and they were questioning my integrity because of things Claire was spreading around. I reached out to Claire, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. We'd been through everything together, school, breakups, tough jobs, everything. So I thought there had to be some reason, some misunderstanding that had led to this. But when I asked to meet with her, she acted surprised, almost feigning innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said with a sly smile, leaning back in her chair. "I was just looking out for Adam. I thought he deserved to know who he's marrying." Her words stunned me. "Claire, what are you even talking about? You're supposed to be my best friend. Why would you make up these lies?" She shrugged, her expression unreadable. "Sometimes the truth needs a little help. And maybe I was hurt that you didn't ask me to be your maid of honor." The pieces started to click into place. My maid of honor was my cousin, who I'd been close to since we were little. I'd chosen her for the role because she was practically a sister to me, and I hadn't thought Claire would mind. But apparently, she had taken it as a personal betrayal, and now she was determined to sabotage my wedding out of sheer spite. "Claire, this is insane," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're hurting me and damaging my relationships because you're mad I didn't choose you to be my maid of honor." Her face hardened. "I put everything into this friendship, Megan. Years. And you're just going to toss me aside for someone else." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my wedding, my chance to start a new life with Adam, and she was doing everything in her power to ruin it. "Claire, you're supposed to be my friend. Friends don't do this to each other." She crossed her arms, looking unfazed. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you replaced me." I left the meeting feeling more hurt and betrayed than I'd ever felt in my life. How could someone who had been so close to me, who I trusted with everything, turn against me like this? I tried to focus on the wedding, telling myself that she'd eventually calm down and things would go back to normal, but the damage had already been done. Despite everything, the wedding day arrived, and while Adam and I were able to enjoy the ceremony and reception, there was a tension hanging over the day, a sense that certain people were watching me, judging, wondering if any of Claire's rumors held any truth. I could feel it during the speeches, see it in the way a few family members kept their distance. The joy I'd hoped to feel was overshadowed by the weight of Claire's betrayal. A few weeks after the wedding, I decided it was time to cut Claire out of my life completely. I tried to forgive, to give her the benefit of the doubt, but the way she had treated me, the lies she had spread, it was unforgivable. I didn't see how our friendship could recover. But before I could even begin that conversation, Claire showed up unannounced at our house, carrying a gift basket and a big smile, acting as if nothing had happened. "Hey, Megan. Just wanted to drop by and see how you're doing," she said brightly, stepping into the house without waiting for an invitation. I thought it was time we moved on from that little spat before the wedding. "Spat?" I echoed, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Claire, you tried to ruin my wedding. You spread lies about me to my own family. That's not a spat." She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, come on. We're best friends. We've always had little tiffs here and there. But at the end of the day, we forget each other." I stared at her in disbelief, hardly able to believe her audacity. "Claire, what you did isn't something I can just forgive and forget. You put doubts in Adam's mind. You made my family question me. Why would I just pretend like none of that happened?" She gave me a hard look, her smile fading. "Because if you don't, I have more I could say. Things that might make your new husband think twice about who he married." Her words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't an apology. It was a threat. "What could you possibly have to say about me, Claire?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. "Oh, I have plenty. Things you've told me over the years, things that might sound compromising if taken the wrong way. Adam's a smart guy, but even he might start to wonder about you if he hears enough stories." I felt my hands clench into fists. This woman, my supposed best friend, was willing to go to any length to control me, to make me forgive her and keep her close, all for her own ego. "You really think I'm going to let you be part of my life, let alone forgive you, after everything you've done?" I said, my voice low with barely contained rage. Claire leaned forward, a triumphant glint in her eye. "I think you'll realize that it's in your best interest to let me back in, Megan. Besides, don't you want a godmother for your future kids? Who better than someone who knows you better than anyone?" I took a deep, steadying breath, forcing myself to keep calm. "You're not going to blackmail me into forgiving you, Claire. I'm done with this friendship. Done with you." But as she left, her smirk told me that this wasn't over. The lies she'd already spread had nearly cost me everything, and I had a feeling she wasn't about to stop there. After Claire left that day, a sense of dread settled over me, knowing she'd likely keep her word about sharing more if I didn't let her back into my life. It was as if she was determined to manipulate her way into a permanent place in my family, no matter the cost. I tried to shake off the worry, reminding myself that the people closest to me knew who I really was. But the threat of her spreading more lies, of her poisoning the new life I'd just begun with Adam, gnawed at me. A few days later, I told Adam everything about Claire's visit. His face darkened as I described her threats, his jaw clenched tightly. "I can't believe she would do this to you. To us. She sounds unhinged." "Exactly," I replied, feeling relieved that he understood. "I don't want to give her any more power over us, but I don't know what she might say if I completely cut her off." Adam wrapped an arm around me. "You don't owe her anything, Megan. She's trying to control you with lies, and that's not a friend. It's manipulation." We agreed that the best approach was to keep our distance, to avoid giving Claire any reason to think she could insert herself back into our lives. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she wouldn't let this go so easily. Then, a few weeks later, I noticed a strange shift in how people from our social circle were behaving toward me. Mutual friends who had always been warm suddenly seemed awkward, avoiding eye contact, responding to my messages with short, polite replies. Even my family seemed a little distant, which stung. My mother, who'd never been one to hold back, called me one evening, her voice hesitant. "Megan," she began, "I wanted to talk to you about something personal." "Sure, Mom. What's up?" I replied, a feeling of dread building up in my chest. She hesitated, her words laced with concern. "Claire reached out to me last week. She told me she was worried about you. She said you'd confided in her that you were struggling with loyalty in your marriage." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. "What? Mom, I would never say that. Claire is lying. She's doing this because I won't forgive her after everything she did." My mother's sigh was heavy, as though trying to absorb the shock of what I was saying. Honey, I didn't think it sounded like you, but she seemed so genuinely concerned. She said she was your best friend, that she felt responsible for helping you. Mom, listen to me, I said, fighting to keep my voice calm. Claire has been trying to control me. She tried to ruin my wedding by spreading lies, and now she's threatening me unless I let her be part of my life. None of what she's telling you is true. My mother was quiet for a moment before she spoke again. I believe you, Megan, but she's talking to other family members too. You might want to clear the air with them. She's making it sound like she's worried, but really, it's casting you in a terrible light. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence, furious and heartbroken. Claire had taken things to the next level, poisoning my family and friends against me, all while pretending she was just concerned. That evening, Adam and I sat down together, discussing how to handle the situation. You should get ahead of this, he suggested. Tell your friends and family the truth before Claire does any more damage. It felt uncomfortable to imagine calling people up, explaining Claire's lies, but I knew he was right. The longer I stayed silent, the more control she'd have over my reputation. I began with my closest friends, inviting them over for coffee and explaining everything, from Claire's behavior leading up to the wedding to the threats she'd made afterward. Some were horrified, immediately offering their support, but others seemed uncomfortable, as though unsure of who to believe. One of my oldest friends, Rachel 31F, looked at me, her expression conflicted. I'm sorry, Megan, but I've known Claire almost as long as I've known you. Why would she go to such lengths? Are you sure this isn't just a misunderstanding? I fought back frustration, knowing that Claire had manipulated her way into people's trust. Rachel, she's doing this because I wouldn't forgive her after she tried to ruin my wedding. She's mad I didn't make her my maid of honor, and now she's trying to hurt me however she can. Rachel sighed, shaking her head. It's just hard to believe. She was always there for you, you know. Are you sure she's not just feeling abandoned? The conversation left me feeling more isolated than ever. Even those who supported me seemed uncertain, as if the seeds Claire had planted were still lingering in their minds. By the end of the week, I was emotionally drained from defending myself against things I'd never done. One evening, I got a message from Claire. I heard you've been telling people things about me, Megan. I wouldn't keep that up if I were you. Remember, I know a lot more about you than they do. I felt a surge of anger. Her audacity was mind-boggling. She had spent weeks dragging my name through the mud, and now she was warning me against telling my own side of the story. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, one where the person I trusted most had become my biggest threat. Adam suggested that I keep a record of everything. Every message, every lie she spread, and every interaction where she tried to manipulate me. If she tries anything else, we'll have proof that she's the one behind all of this, he reasoned. This isn't just petty gossip, Megan. She's actively trying to ruin your relationships. It felt strange to start documenting things against someone who had once been like family to me, but I knew he was right. Claire was determined to control me, and she was using every trick she knew to try to back me into a corner. Then, one evening, just as I was beginning to feel some sense of control over the situation, Claire took things a step further. I got a call from my cousin, my maid of honor, her voice tense with worry. Megan, I just got off the phone with Claire. She's saying you confided in her that you're struggling with postpartum depression. She's telling people she's worried about your ability to handle things once the baby arrives. My blood ran cold. Not only was this another lie, but it was also a deeply personal attack, one that could cast doubts on my ability to care for my own child. The malice behind it was staggering. She has no right to say that, I whispered, my voice shaking. She's doing this to manipulate her way into being part of my child's life, and if I let her, she's only going to keep trying to control us. My cousin sighed. I know, Meg. I thought you should know how far she's willing to go. You need to do something. This can't keep happening. In that moment, I realized that Claire's manipulation wasn't going to stop until I confronted it head-on. She was willing to twist even the most vulnerable parts of my life to suit her agenda, and if I let it slide, she'd only continue her campaign to break down my relationships, one lie at a time. That night, Adam and I discussed a plan. We decided to send a group message to everyone in our close circle, addressing the rumors and clarifying what was really going on. It was uncomfortable, especially knowing that Claire would likely retaliate, but I couldn't let her keep warping the truth. In the message, I was direct but calm. I explained how Claire had spread damaging lies and tried to manipulate me, and I asked everyone to respect our decision to distance ourselves from her. I shared examples of the lies she'd spread and emphasized that Adam and I were fully committed to building our life together without interference. The message sent shockwaves through our social circle, and over the next few days, I received supportive messages from people who'd been on the fence, apologizing for believing Claire's stories. Others, however, stayed silent, likely uncomfortable with the drama or uncertain of whom to believe. But the turning point came when my mother called, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Megan, I want you to know that I believe you," she said firmly, "and I think you're doing the right thing by putting boundaries in place. Family is about support, not control." Those words filled me with a strength I hadn't felt in weeks. I realized then that Claire's power over me was only as strong as the hold I allowed her to have. She could spin her lies, try to manipulate people, but as long as I held firm in my truth, she couldn't destroy the life I'd built with Adam. With renewed resolve, I moved forward, ready to face whatever Claire threw my way next. The follow-up from my message rippled through our social circle. Some people reached out to express their support, while others kept their distance, likely wary of getting involved. But the most surprising reaction came from Claire herself, who, within a day of my message, sent me an email, a long, angry diatribe. She didn't apologize or even try to defend her actions. Instead, she doubled down, calling me paranoid and ungrateful. She claimed I'd turned people against her, that I was blowing everything out of proportion and ruining her reputation. "You're making a huge mistake," she wrote. "I was only ever looking out for you, Megan. And if you can't see that, maybe I need to show everyone else just who you really are." It was a new level of gaslighting, one that made me feel like I'd somehow wronged her, despite everything she'd done. But I held firm, reminding myself that I'd done nothing to deserve this treatment. Adam, who had read the email with me, was furious. "She's spiraling, Megan. She's trying to bait you into responding to keep you wrapped up in her web." I nodded, deleting the email and setting her address to my spam filter. I was done. I wasn't going to keep feeding into her manipulation, and I was ready to let her unravel on her own. But Claire wasn't finished. Over the next few weeks, she made good on her threats, contacting everyone she could, friends, family, even some of Adam's colleagues, to spread more lies. I hear back from mutual acquaintances, each with a new concern that Claire had supposedly shared with them. The rumors ranged from accusations about my past to bizarre claims that I was unstable and incapable of handling the responsibilities of marriage and motherhood. It felt like she was digging up anything she could twist into a weapon. One night, as Adam and I were finally winding down, we got a call from his sister, Emily, 28F. "I just wanted to check in with you both," she said cautiously, her voice tinged with worry. "Claire called me earlier and said she was worried about you, Megan. She said, well, she hinted that you were struggling with anxiety and that you weren't managing well. She even implied that you might be a risk to your own baby." The room felt like it was spinning. Claire was now crossing into dangerous territory, trying to paint me as someone unfit to be a mother. I could feel the anger simmering beneath the surface, but I tried to keep my voice calm. "Emily, you know that's not true. I'm perfectly fine, and Adam and I have been preparing for this baby together. Claire is making this up to hurt us because we chose to distance ourselves from her." Emily hesitated, but I could hear her relief as she said, "I thought so. I told her it didn't sound like you at all. I just wanted to hear it from you." After we hung up, Adam pulled me close, his expression a mix of frustration and protectiveness. "She's pushing harder because she knows she's losing control. It's like she'll do anything to keep you within her reach, even if it means destroying you." The anger I felt was overwhelming, but beneath it was a flicker of fear. Claire was relentless, her obsession with tearing me down escalating by the day. I knew it was time to take a definitive stand, something that would make it clear to her, and everyone else, that I wouldn't allow her to manipulate or threaten my life any longer. The next morning, Adam and I met with a lawyer. I explained everything. Claire's actions before the wedding, her threats, her lies, her attempts to tarnish my reputation and undermine my relationships. I showed the lawyer the messages I'd saved, emails, and the texts that traced a clear pattern of her interference and harassment. The lawyer listened patiently, nodding as he took notes. "This kind of behavior is more common than you'd think," he said. "People often mistake closeness in friendships for a free pass to cross personal boundaries. But from what you described, this is a clear case of harassment, even defamation. We have options." For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of control return. He explained that we could issue a cease and desist letter, which would formally warn Claire to stop her actions immediately. If she continued, we could pursue further legal action, including a restraining order or even filing for defamation if her claims continued to affect my reputation. People like Claire are often fueled by their ability to stir up drama without consequences. The lawyer continued. A formal legal notice might make her realize that her actions won't be tolerated. And if she ignores it, then we'll have even more evidence against her. I left the meeting with a sense of purpose, a weight lifting as I realized that I didn't have to keep playing by her rules. This wasn't just about cutting her out of my life. It was about protecting myself and the family I was building with Adam. I wasn't going to let Claire's vendetta overshadow our happiness any longer. A few days later, the letter was drafted and sent to Claire's address. It was a clear, direct notice, warning her that if she continued to spread lies or harass me, we would pursue legal action. There was a strange satisfaction in knowing that, finally, I'd done something to shield myself from her toxic influence. Now the ball was in her court. She could either back down or face the consequences of her actions. For the next week, things were quiet. I felt a cautious relief, wondering if maybe, finally, she'd understood that I was serious, that she couldn't keep getting away with her threats and lies. Adam and I tried to return to our normal routines, and I focused on the upcoming arrival of our baby, allowing myself to feel a flicker of excitement without the shadow of Claire hanging over me. But then, as I was shopping for baby supplies one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a new notification. It was from a friend I hadn't heard from in a while, her message cryptic and laced with sympathy. "Megan, I'm so sorry about what I've been hearing. Claire's been saying some pretty heavy things." I didn't want to believe it, but, well, are you okay? My heart sank. Despite the cease and desist, Claire had continued her campaign, now making her attacks more public. I couldn't believe her nerve. She was willing to risk legal action just to keep pushing her narrative. Furious, I called my lawyer immediately, explaining that Claire had ignored the letter and was now spreading lies to people outside our close circle. The lawyer's voice was calm but firm. "This is exactly the evidence we need to take the next step, Megan. It's time to file for a restraining order. If she's spreading lies to a larger group, it strengthens your case for defamation as well." Later that evening, as Adam and I sat down to discuss everything, I felt the reality of Claire's actions finally sink in. This was beyond a vendetta. It was an obsession, one that went far deeper than simple jealousy or hurt feelings. Claire wanted control, and when she couldn't have it, she was willing to destroy everything in her path. "Do you think this will stop her?" I asked, my voice laced with a sadness I couldn't shake. Adam took my hand, his gaze steady. "Megan, this is her last chance. If she doesn't stop, she'll have to face the consequences. But no matter what happens, you're not alone. We'll get through this together." The next day, the restraining order was filed, and as I signed the papers, I felt a finality in my decision to sever Claire from my life for good. She had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, and I knew that no amount of apology or reconciliation could ever repair the damage she'd done. In the weeks that followed, a strange calm settled over our lives. Claire didn't reach out, and mutual friends, aware of the restraining order, kept their distance from the drama. It felt as though a heavy cloud had lifted, allowing Adam and me to focus on the things that truly mattered: our life together, the home we were building, and the baby we were eagerly waiting to welcome. Eventually, news trickled down that Claire had moved to another city, distancing herself from everyone she once knew. Part of me felt relieved, but there was also a lingering sadness for what we'd lost. The friendship that had been twisted by jealousy and control. But in the end, I knew that standing up for myself had been the right choice. By putting my well-being and my family first, I protected the life I wanted, a life free of manipulation and control. And as I prepared for the arrival of my child, I felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that this new chapter would be built on truth, love, and the strength I found within myself to walk away from what no longer served me. In the months after filing the restraining order, life began to settle back into something resembling peace. With Claire gone, the relief was palpable. There was no more waking up to anxious messages from friends or family, no unexpected phone calls filled with questions about rumors, and no daily dread of what she might do next. Finally, Adam and I were able to focus on our life together, without the constant shadow of Claire's interference. But while she was no longer directly in our lives, I still felt the ripples of her actions. There were still a few friendships and family relationships that bore the marks of her manipulation, people who hadn't quite shaken off the rumors she'd spread. And though I did my best to be understanding, there was always that hint of mistrust in their eyes, a hesitation that lingered just beneath the surface. One afternoon, as Adam and I were sorting through some baby clothes in the nursery, I voiced what had been weighing on me. I hate that she still has this hold over people, even when she's not here anymore. It's like a stain that won't go away. Adam looked over at me, empathy softening his expression. I know, Megan, but you can't control what people think, and you shouldn't have to keep proving yourself to everyone. They'll see the truth in time. I nodded, though I wasn't entirely convinced. It feels unfair that I'm left cleaning up the mess she made while she moves on, like nothing happened. He squeezed my hand, his voice filled with quiet reassurance. People who matter, who know you, will eventually see through her lies. And those who don't, well, maybe they were never truly in your corner to begin with. It was a hard truth to accept, but one that I knew was necessary if I wanted to move forward. I couldn't keep holding on to the need for validation from everyone. The people who genuinely cared would eventually come to see that Claire's version of events had been twisted by her own motives. In the following weeks, as we prepared for the baby's arrival, I made a conscious decision to focus on my own happiness and the life Adam and I were building. We reconnected with friends who'd stood by us, hosting small gatherings and filling our home with laughter and warmth. Slowly, I began to feel a lightness that I hadn't experienced in a long time. Then, one quiet morning, I received a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Nina, 31F, an old friend of mine and Claire's from college. Nina had moved away shortly after graduation, and though we'd stayed loosely in touch over social media, we hadn't spoken directly in a long time. The message was simple. Hey, Megan. I know this is out of the blue, but I thought you should know that Claire's been talking about you. Again, she reached out to me recently, saying some pretty strange things, and I didn't know what to believe. I'd love to catch up, maybe get the real story. My stomach tightened. Just when I thought Claire had finally faded from our lives, here she was again, pulling new people into her orbit. But rather than feeling anger, I felt a weary sense of resolution. This time, I wouldn't let her drag me back into her drama. I decided to meet Nina for coffee, feeling that she at least deserved an honest explanation. When we sat down, I could see the curiosity and concern in her eyes. Thanks for meeting me, Megan, she said. Claire told me some pretty wild things about you. But honestly, it didn't sit right with me. I remember you as one of the most genuine people I knew back then. I smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. Thank you, Nina. That means a lot. Honestly, it's been exhausting. Claire, she's not the person I thought she was, and it's taken me a long time to see it. I explained everything to her, how Claire had tried to ruin my wedding, the lies, the threats, the manipulation that only grew worse as I tried to distance myself. I told her about the restraining order and how I'd been forced to sever ties to protect my family. Nina listened, nodding with understanding. I'm so sorry you went through that, Megan. I had no idea it had gotten that bad. Claire always had this need for control, but I never realized she'd go that far. It's been a painful lesson, I admitted, but I can't let her hold power over me anymore. I've made my peace with the fact that some people might believe her. I'm just trying to focus on the people who truly know me. After our conversation, Nina promised to set the record straight with anyone she knew who might still be in contact with Claire. It was a small victory, but it gave me hope that the truth would eventually reach the people who mattered. A few weeks later, as Adam and I welcomed our daughter into the world, everything else faded into the background. The moment I held her, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose and love that filled every corner of my heart. She was tiny, delicate, and perfect, and I knew that nothing Claire could do would ever diminish this moment, this life I'd built. In the days that followed, we introduced her to friends and family who had stood by us, their joy and support washing away any lingering shadows of Claire's influence. Our home was filled with warmth and laughter, the love and connection I'd always dreamed of. One evening, as Adam rocked our daughter to sleep, he looked at me with a soft smile. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deeply within me. "Yes, we have, and I wouldn't change a thing. This, our family, this is all that matters." With Claire's absence, I finally felt a true sense of closure. Her lies, her manipulations, her attempts to tear down everything I cared about, they were all in the past now, a part of my story but not the part that defined me. I had chosen to rise above it, to protect the life and the love that mattered most. In the end, Claire's actions had only strengthened my resolve, teaching me to guard my boundaries, to prioritize my happiness, and to surround myself with people who truly cared. She had once been a central figure in my life, a best friend I trusted with everything, but now she was a distant memory, a chapter I'd turned the page on. And as I watched Adam cradle our daughter, feeling the peace and contentment that had finally taken root, I knew I had everything I needed. Claire was no longer a part of my life, and I was ready to leave her, and all the hurt she'd caused, behind, stepping into a future filled with love, honesty, and the family I had chosen to protect at all costs. Life settled into a peaceful, steady rhythm. Each morning, Adam and I woke up to our daughter's soft babbling, her little hands reaching out as if she couldn't wait to explore the world. The past year, the drama, the heartbreak, and the betrayals had been grueling, but holding my daughter now, it all felt like a distant memory, a storm we weathered and come out of stronger. With Claire's absence, everything felt lighter. The whispers had faded, the questions stopped, and the friendships that had remained intact grew deeper. I discovered a new layer of resilience within myself. I was done explaining, defending, or worrying about people who chose to listen to Claire's lies. I knew my truth, and that was enough. But then, one late afternoon, as I was scrolling through messages while my daughter napped, a notification popped up. Claire had posted a long public message on social media. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The post was filled with a mix of exaggerated nostalgia and blatant revisionist history, written as though we were still best friends who'd just had a small falling out. She painted herself as the one heartbroken over our distance, hinting that I had abandoned her and refused to see how much she tried to help. It was a thinly veiled attempt to pull sympathy from anyone who still followed her. Part of me was tempted to respond, to set the record straight once and for all. But as I sat there, I felt the futility of it all settle over me. This post was her last grasp at control, a last-ditch attempt to paint herself as the victim. Responding would only pull me back into her web, and that was a place I'd vowed never to return. Adam walked in, noticing my expression. "Something up?" I showed him the post, rolling my eyes as I passed him my phone. He read it, his eyebrows knitting together. "Wow, she's still trying, huh?" I nodded, though a small smile crept onto my face. "It's almost sad. She's clinging to this like it's some kind of victory." Adam shrugged, handing me back the phone. "Let her have it. If that's what she needs to feel good about herself, it doesn't change a thing for us." And he was right. Claire's words no longer held any weight over me, and I wasn't about to waste another second of my life justifying myself or my choices. I turned off my phone, setting it aside with a finality that felt like a quiet, personal victory. A few days later, I received an unexpected message from an old friend who had seen Claire's post. "Hey Megan, I know it's been a while, but I saw Claire's post, and I wanted you to know, I get it now. She reached out to me too, told me all kinds of things. But something didn't sit right with me. I wish I'd trusted you sooner." Reading her message brought a gentle sense of closure. The people who truly knew me, who saw through Claire's manipulation, had come back into my life willingly, without needing explanations or defenses. And the ones who hadn't, I realized I could live without their approval. Over time, I noticed that Claire's name came up less and less like a distant storm that had finally passed. Friends no longer asked about her, family no longer mentioned her, and life continued with a peace I hadn't thought possible a year ago. I poured my energy into motherhood, into strengthening my relationship with Adam, and into the friendships that had weathered the turbulence with me. One afternoon, as I was watching our daughter take her first wobbly steps, a realization washed over me. Claire's chapter in my life had truly ended. Her influence, her manipulations, even her existence, they were things of the past, and I felt nothing but a quiet gratitude for where I was now. I'd learned to set boundaries, to trust myself, and to value the people who stood by me through the worst. I'd built a life free of her hold, filled instead with love, laughter, and a peace I'd fought hard to protect. Claire had once been a defining figure in my life, someone I trusted and leaned on. But now, she was merely a lesson, one that had taught me the importance of choosing the people who chose me back, without conditions, lies, or manipulation. And as I reached down to scoop my daughter into my arms, I felt the strength of that choice settle deep within me, a quiet assurance that the life I had now was truly mine, built on trust, resilience, and the unwavering support of those who mattered most.